Emily settles into her mother's luxurious home, but the shadows of her past still loom large. A mysterious dark figure darts through the forest, sparking her panic. Meanwhile, her first day at school is met with unwelcoming attitudes, especially from a handsome but rude boy named Thomas. Can Emily uncover the secrets lurking around her, while facing the challenges of her new environment? Tense from the start, as Emily's heartbeat sets the stage for this story. Don't go away, subscribe to us, and don't miss a single heart-racing moment. Chapter 1. The cold atmosphere made it hard for me to sit still in the car. Even with the windows rolled up and the heater on full blast, I was freezing. I pulled my jacket closer to my body and leaned my head against the fogged-up window in my dad's BMW. I sighed, hating the unfortunate events that have unfolded in my short 17 years of life. My dad cleared his throat, breaking the awkward silence. Emily, my dad looked at me through the rearview mirror. Can we talk? I'm sorry. I rolled my eyes and turned up the volume to my music, making sure I couldn't hear him speak. I'm tired of his sorry crap. He's been trying to apologize to me for a week, but apologies just don't cut it anymore. I couldn't wait until I got to my mother's house. Just 30 more minutes and I'll be able to smile again. My father was making me move in with my mom because of his bitchy, evil new wife, Sandra. She hated my guts because she wanted my dad for herself. More likely, she wanted his money to herself. Just then her irritating voice popped into my head. Just wait, you little brat. When your father and I get married, you are going to be so gone. You're going to move back with the monster that made you. My father did give her everything she wanted, but I didn't expect him to grant that one wish of hers. Right now that pissed me off. He chose her over his own daughter. I know, right? What a dedicated, loving father. I moved in with my dad because my mother was a hard worker. She was a famous designer who made clothes for celebrities. Her brand Lovely Avenue was a hit. Because of that, she constantly traveled place to place. She sacrificed seeing her daughter every day because she paid for my tuition so that I could follow my dreams to open my own bakery. My father went against that. He thought I should be a surgeon just like him. That was one of the reasons my parents are divorced. He wanted my older brother and I to live our lives the way my father wanted. Just then my phone vibrated in my pocket, waking me up from my reverie. I pulled out my cell phone. One new text message from Chase. It read. I sighed and opened up the text message. Baby, I miss you. I hope you forgive me. I'm sorry for all the crap I have done. I'm sorry. I love you. I rolled my eyes once again. This time I was on the verge of crying. Another man I loved in my life that let me down. Chase was my boyfriend. I loved him very much. He had short, curly blonde hair and brown eyes. We were together for 2 years and I always thought we were going to be together. I always thought we would have gotten married and have kids. But I was foolish to believe in love. Look where it led me. My parents' divorce, my dad leaving me and Chase cheating on me with my best friend, Ollie. I felt a pang in my chest just thinking about it. Flashback. I was heading over to Chase's house to rant about how my dad chose Sandra over me. That was the day my father broke the news about me going back to live with my mother. I was angry and my tears just kept rolling down my face. I turned into Chase's street and pulled up into his house. There was another car there and I knew instantly from the Hello Kitty sticker on the bumper that it was my best friend, Ali's car. She probably came over to tell him about me moving. I walked in without knocking like I usually do. I going up the stairs and froze when I heard moaning and grunts coming from upstairs. Oh my gosh, Chase. Faster, a distressed voice said. I heard another moan. I knew that voice. That was Ollie. At that moment I felt like the whole world turned against me. Everyone I loved was stabbing me in the back. Why fate chose for it all to be on the same day was beyond me. I could literally hear my heart breaking. But it wasn't the time to think about that. I had to hold my head up high. I was strong. I wasn't angry, I was infuriated. The moan from Ali's mouth sent me stomping up the stairs and barging into Chase's room. My heart broke some more. I saw Ali's red hair poking out from under Chase. Chase looked back at me at the doorway with the look of horror on his face. They both scrambled to their feet. Oh, why did you guys stop? It was getting to the good part, I said, venom dripping from my voice. They were scrambling, looking for their clothes that were thrown all over the floor. I saw Ali's bra and threw it at her. You may want to use this. Her face was red. Emily, it's not what it looks like, Chase said. I scoffed and rolled my eyes, crossing my arms over my chest. Oh yeah, let me guess. I paused dramatically. You guys decided to get to know each other like I had been insisting all this time, I spat. Both of them flinched. Ollie was looking at the ground and she was quiet the whole time. Something she did often when she was scared. Ollie, I can't believe you. We've been friends since the first grade. I yelled. I looked at Chase. And you, I loved you. I turned on my heel, stalking out of the house. Chase kept yelling my name, telling me to come back and saying how much he was sorry and how much he loved me. End of flashback. I used to be happy, carefree, bright, and thought love was the most amazing thing in the world. I used to go to parties, make out with my boyfriend, made new friends, and do the unthinkable. I used to love skydiving, surfing, and riding the most terrifying rides at the amusement park. Now I'm sad, serious, and dull. Now I prefer staying at home watching reruns of Pretty Little Liars, eating tubs of Ben Amp Jerry's strawberry ice cream, and trying to avoid my social life. Most importantly, I don't believe in falling in love. Chapter 2, Emily. My mom yelled and ran out of the house, engulfing me in a bear hug. I almost fell from the impact. I laughed when she smothered my face with kisses and tears streamed down her face. Her perfume filled my nose and I instantly relaxed. I sighed in contentment. I knew for sure my mother would never betray me. She would never give up on me. This is the first time I smiled in days. I felt so safe in her arms. You've grown so much. I missed you. Mom, you saw me 2 weeks ago. I chuckled and sighed again. I missed you too, I said seriously. My dad cleared his throat and I scowled. What did he want this time? I turned around and glared at my dad, but he just smiled at me. I narrowed my eyes at him and he just turned to smile at my mother. Ella, you look great as always, my father greeted. It was true. My mother looked gorgeous. She's 42 and she looked like she was still in her early 30s. Her long, straight, dark brown hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, and she wore a black dress that hugged her body nicely. Her high cheekbones complemented her black eyes and her red lipstick made her look professional, yet lovely. I looked just like her, except my hair was slightly curled at the bottom, making it look like I've curled it with a curling iron, and my eyes were green, just like my father's own. I would be lying if I said I wasn't good looking. It ran in my blood and most of my family members were models. Thank you, George. I've got a meeting in an hour, she groaned and looked at her watch. I hate to leave Emily because she just arrived, but duty calls. She looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry. I was hoping I wasn't going to be busy today. I hope you don't mind because it's going to be held in the house. I looked over at the mansion my mom called home. It was beautiful, of course. She was filthy rich, but she didn't take it for granted. It was 2 stories high. Inside there was 12 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, 1 huge kitchen, a dining room, a living area, a workout area, my mother's workshop, a basement, an attic, and finally a huge meeting room for when she has meetings for her job. I shook my head and smiled at my mom. Mom, this is your house. Stop freaking out. I understand. She smiled sweetly at me. I saw Felly, one of my mother's maids, coming outside and I ran up to her, hugging her. She was like my aunt. She had short curly gray hair and she was short and stubby. She had a huge smile on her face that brightened up her whole face. Aunt Felly, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. No need to worry about me, sweetheart. How you doing? She smiled, trying to smooth out her hair. By the way, I made your favorite southern pot pie to make you feel better. I'm all right. Could be doing better. Oh, I can't wait to eat that. My mouth watered at the thought of her famous pot pie. She chuckled at my expression. Felly, it's good to see you again. My dad said enthusiastically, interrupting my conversation once again. He looked at me with a serious look on his face. Emily, can we talk? There's nothing to talk about, I simply said, shrugging. Mom, I'll see you inside. My mother looked concerned. Her hands were knotted together in front of her. She started twiddling her thumbs and she bit her lip. She did that often when she was deep in thought or when she was nervous. I started stalking off towards the main entrance of the house, while Felly followed me, rubbing my back soothingly. Emily Jean Rhodes Saunders. I froze in place when he said my whole name. My back was still facing him and I tensed up. Felly noticed and she stepped away from me. She knew that when I was tense I was mad. And it isn't pretty when I'm mad, trust me. I expected you to understand. You're not a child anymore, Emily. My father's voice sounded angry. He was getting tired and impatient with me, which pissed me off some more. I do understand. You love Sandra more than me. I spat out and walked into the house without looking back. I was on the verge of crying again. How much tears can a girl hold? I was just one person and I certainly couldn't handle this crap anymore. I was only 17 and I shouldn't be worrying about these things. I wished I was normal. I wished that my parents were still married, that my dad took care of his little girl, and that my boyfriend loved me unconditionally. But I wasn't normal. I was Emily Saunders. I was far from normal. Half an hour later, my dad finally left. He tried to say goodbye, but I ignored him. My mom left me with some Ben Jerry's strawberry ice cream before going to her meeting. I wished my brother were here. He would have been comforting me and he would have told my dad to leave me the hell alone. He would have protected me. He would have tickled me until I started smiling again. My brother Darren was 2 years older than me and right now, he was at college all the way in Washington. I missed him terribly. He was working on getting a degree as a mechanic. My father wanted him to become a star baseball player, but Darren didn't listen to him. It was his life after all. That's how I learned to stand up to my father. Darren was my inspiration. His voice popped into my mind. Hold your head up high and smile. Stand up tall and remain strong. You are strong. You know why? I would smile at him knowing what he would say next. Because I'm your brother. We would laugh and he would tickle me until I was almost out of breath. It was getting dark already and I could see the stars in the sky began to appear. I was sitting in my huge bedroom, looking out the window to the backyard. The only thing I didn't like about this place was the forest that was a few feet away from my house. It was strange and creepy. It looked like one of those forests in those scary movies they tell you not to go into. The fog surrounded the trees mysteriously and I shivered at the thought of walking into the forest and what could happen if I did. Just when I thought that, I saw something black zipping through trees. What the hell was that? I started to panic. Was it a dog? Dogs certainly weren't as big as that. Maybe it was a bear. But bears didn't move that fast, a little voice in my head said. Goosebumps rose all over my body and my heart started going in overdrive. I closed my eyes and shook my head and looked back at the forest. There was nothing. It just looked creepy as usual. Maybe I was hallucinating. I was tired after all. Someone knocked on my door, waking me up from my reverie. Come in, I called, still looking outside. The door opened slowly and my mom's head popped inside. She looked concerned and worried. She came in and obviously, she changed into something more comfortable. Her hair was in a messy bun and she wore a white loose shirt and gray sweats. Honey, you okay? Yeah, I'm just mad at Dad. I sighed. You have every right to be. I can't believe he married a skank. My mother spat and shivered in disgust. I can't believe he chose her over his own daughter. I stayed quiet the whole time my mom ranted about the reasons she divorced him. He was selfish. He wanted things to go his way. Gosh, when is he ever going to learn? My mom just kept going on until I got up and started unpacking my clothes. She watched me curiously and started helping me unpack my stuff. It was silent and I appreciated it. I didn't feel like talking about my dad anymore. What's done is done. By the time I was halfway done, my right shoulder started aching. I winced and started rolling it. I rubbed it, but it did nothing to help my burning shoulder. My mom noticed and she looked at me worried. She bit her lip. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing big. It's been happening for a week. I rubbed my shoulder, wincing. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, trying to calm myself down. It's probably because I'm tired. I think you're as my mom stopped herself mid-sentence and looked scared for a moment. I looked at her curiously. She bit her lip again and she looked off into space. Huh. That seemed to jolt her out of whatever she was thinking. Gosh, what is wrong? Weird things just keep happening. Mom, are you alright? Yeah. It's probably because you're tired. I mean, you've been stressed. You've been through a lot. She said nervously. I looked at her suspiciously and she sighed. Honey, you do realize I'm sorry. You don't deserve any of this. Mom, it's not your fault. Trust me. I'm with you now and I couldn't wish for anything else. I hugged her as she began to cry. I feel like a horrible parent. I mean, my daughter is not happy. What's wrong with me? She said, upset. She wiped her tears away. I felt a pang in my chest. She thought this was her fault. Let me make it up to you. Spa day Saturday. Mom, it's not your fault. And I'd love to. I sighed and hugged her once more. She looked excited and I smiled. I missed these moments with my mom. The moments where it was just the two of us. Either shopping, relaxing, getting our nails done, or just talking. She always found a way to make my day. That way, the aching in your shoulder would go away, she winked. And you look like crap, she said, her face scrunching up. And you stink too. You really need to take a bath. Gee, thanks, Mom. I love you too, I said sarcastically. Anyways, what did Dad say to you? He didn't say anything. He was a chicken. My mom rolled her eyes. I did most of the talking. I told him that you needed space. I also said some violent things, but you don't need to hear those things, she said proudly. She didn't like it when someone messes with her or her kids. When she gets mad, she gets mad. Never get on my mom's bad side, just saying. So how's you and Chase? I broke down. I couldn't take it anymore. Holding back my tears was too hard. My heart was aching some more. My mother looked at me curiously while she held my hand. She looked sorry for me. She probably thought I only missed him. To tell you the truth, I do miss him and I hate myself for that. He cheated on me, I said between sobs. My mom gasped and embraced me in a motherly hug. W with Ollie. What? She said angrily. Her eyes narrowing and she looked like she was going to kill someone pretty soon. I swear when I see those two I'm going to Mom, forget about it. They're nothing to me anymore. Since I'm here, I'm going to leave the past behind and start fresh. I interrupted, putting on a fake smile. I'm going to take a shower since I stink, I said, emphasizing the last two words. She laughed and I smiled. I loved my mom's laugh. It made me happy to know I made her happy. Do you have some Epsom salt? My shoulder is really hurting. I started rubbing my shoulder again, wincing when the pain intensified. Yeah, it's in your bathroom drawer. Okay, thanks. I started walking to my bathroom. Good night, Mom. I love you. Thanks for everything. I could tell she smiled even if I wasn't looking at her. I could feel the happiness radiating off of her. Good night, Emily. No problem, sweetheart, she said softly. By the way, you start school in 2 days. Great, I thought. Here comes the torture. Chapter 3. Hi, I'm Jade Marshall. A gorgeous girl came up to me while I was entering the school. I froze and looked at her cautiously. I wasn't expecting to meet someone this fast, and I was actually hoping I didn't meet anyone at all today. Darn bad luck just loves me. Jade had clear blue eyes and dark long hair that reached up to her belly button. Her bangs were cut side swept and her smile was stunning. She was also tall and wore a black leather jacket. Her olive skin was glowing in the sun. For a moment I thought she just came from a photo shoot, but I quickly shook the thoughts away and gave her a small smile. Welcome to Crawford High, home of the Lions, she said enthusiastically and held her hand out to me. Hi, I'm Emily Saunders, I said, taking her hand in mine and shaking it. I smiled softly at her. But just call me Emily. Cool. Sorry if the welcoming thing was kind of creepy, she said shyly. I'm part of the welcoming committee here at this school. Since this is a small town, not many people enroll here. Obviously, since the welcoming was horrible, this is my first time. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. I laughed along with her. We walked into the school and just like the movies, everyone was in their small little cliques. The jocks and cheerleaders were near their lockers, the nerds sitting at the stairs getting bothered by the bullies, the scary students leaning against the wall trying to look innocent, the sluts looking at the mirrors in their lockers. Well, you get the idea. This school was quite small and the hallways were crowded. It was also old. The lockers were rusting a little, the red paint was faded, and the sign at the entrance of the school was missing the F in Crawford so that it read Crawford High. It was a public school. I begged my mom for about an hour yesterday to enroll me here because I didn't want to go to a rich, snobby, stuck-up school. I already got your schedule and school packet, Jade said. She handed me my things. I looked around. Panic began to surge through me. I'm going to be alone and lost and who knows what will happen to me. I thought to myself. Jade must have seen the look of horror on my face because she said, "Oh, don't worry. You'll get used to it. Plus, I'll be sticking with you today. It's part of the job." She winked. I opened the packet up. So what's your first period? Jade asked, looking over my shoulder at my schedule. AP Calculus. Oh, that's at 2:32 with Mr. Jenkins. He's pretty cool, just gives tons of homework. What else do you have? Second period world geography, third period gym, fourth period literature or drama class, and fifth period AP chemistry, I replied. I scrunched up my nose. Yuck, I have gym for third period. Wow, I have you for everything except for first and fifth. Looks like you're my part. Oh shit, I got to go, she said, looking panicked. I totally forgot I had to do something. If I'm not back by the time the first bell rings, I'm sorry. But you're a smart girl, you'll figure it out, she called out to me while speed walking down the hallway. Great, I thought, I'm all alone now. I ignored all the stares that I was receiving. I put on a fake smile. Might as well give them something to look at. I found my locker and opened it up. It was actually pretty clean, I was lucky. I sighed when I was putting all the notebooks my mom told me to bring into my locker. I pleaded with her to leave it at home since it was my first day, and I didn't really need to bring so many stuff. She simply scolded me and said, "It's better to be prepared than to wait last minute." Someone leaned coolly against the locker next to mine. I looked up and found a guy with curly blonde hair and chocolate brown eyes. He had a nice build. You could tell because the dark gray shirt he wore showed off his nice body. I would have been swooning over him, but he had a cocky smirk on his face. Big turn-off cocky dudes. Hey sweetheart, what do you say we get out of this place and do something more entertaining? He asked and added a wink. Sorry, my parents told me to stay away from strangers, I simply said and almost smiled when he looked shocked for a moment. Obviously, he wasn't used to rejection. I mentally smiled at myself. But how are you going to make new friends if you don't talk to people you don't know? He smirked again. I seriously wanted to slap this guy already. Did my forehead red? I'm easy. I don't think so. I'm Jared. Jared Hunter. And you look familiar. He said. Oh man, here comes the pickup lines. Whoopee. Yeah, I look like the girl you've been waiting for, or perhaps your next girlfriend. I heard that many times before. He looked shocked again before smirking at me once more. Baby, you could fall off a building or fall out of a tree, but the best way to fall is to fall in love with me. I interrupted him and looked up to see him shocked. I laughed and scrunched up my nose. Just give it up, Romeo. You're lame and boring. Romeo's a wuss and I am not boring, he faked hurt. Well, he's manlier than you'll ever be. He scoffed. Chick, you're good, he admitted and held out his hand so I could pound his rock. You know what? You're my new best friend. It's about time I found a badass chick. All the girls here are too easy. He put his arm around my shoulder in a friendly way, and we started walking down the hall. I'm going to show you off to my friends. But seriously, what's your name? Gosh, Jared. You're so bipolar. I mean, first you're hitting on me and the next you're suddenly excited that I rejected you, I laughed. I'm Emily. Emily Saunders. I said it huskily, resembling the way he introduced himself earlier, and he chuckled. Do you have a Band-Aid? He whispered in my ear. Why? I asked, pausing dramatically. Let me guess, you scraped your knee falling for me. We both laughed out loud and I shoved him playfully. Holy crap, you're good. Finally, we reached his group of friends. I stood there stunned. How many people in this school are good looking? This school is filled with people who look like gods or goddesses. Guys, this is Emily Saunders. Just call her Emily. You know, Darren Saunders' sister. They nodded knowingly. I was surprised they knew my brother. She's totally badass. She rejected me. Everyone laughed when he pretended to cry. I'm Charles, the guy with the brown frohawk and gray eyes said. He had his hands wrapped around a pretty girl's waist. Obviously, that was his girlfriend. Badass like your brother, huh? He asked. I nodded and smiled, feeling proud of my brother. The girl that Charles was holding had green eyes and blonde wavy hair that went past her shoulders. She spoke up. I'm Abigail Hunter. That stupid prick's twin sister, she nodded at Jared. A look of disgust came upon her face when she looked at her twin. Jared stuck his tongue out at her. I'm Dustin, a guy with dirty blonde hair said, shaking my hand. He seemed uncomfortable. He probably wasn't the social type. And I'm Alex, the last guy said. He had black hair that was spiked up. By the look of his perfect sculpted face, I could tell a lot of girls hit on him. He smiled at me and shook my hand. The bell rang and I said my goodbyes, not wanting to be late for my first class. That would make me look bad for the rest of the year. We had 5 minutes to get to class before the late bell sounded. I hurriedly climbed up the stairs where the A section of the building was. I walked through the hallway looking for class A232. I was getting impatient. Oh God, I'm going to be late for my first class on my first day, I thought. My teacher is going to think I'm one of those people who think they're badass. I rolled my eyes. Teachers were so judgmental. Oh well, it's not my fault the classroom numbers were faded and so hard to read. I was busy trying to decipher the classroom numbers that I accidentally bumped into someone hard. I stumbled back a bit from the impact, but luckily I caught myself before I fell. The place where our skin touched was tingling and I rubbed it involuntarily. Crap, I'm so sorry, I said, scared. What if this person killed me? This school scared the shit out of me already with all the good-looking people and how strange the atmosphere seemed to be. I looked up at a tall guy who looked about my age and had a nice build. He had jet black hair and blue eyes. He was really hot and good-looking. Again, I would have been swooning over him if he didn't have that scowl on his face. Our eyes locked and the whole world seemed to stop for a moment. It felt like we were the only two in the hallway. My heart skipped multiple beats and my breath hitched. I saw something in those blue eyes. It was as if I was looking at the scene all by myself. It was a huge gray wolf and he looked like a puppy that was given a treat. It was as if he found something he has been searching for his whole life. For some reason it made my heart swell up. The scene disappeared and I closed my eyes. I felt dizzy and stupid. I was hallucinating again. I opened my eyes again when I regained my strength. The guy's face softened a bit, but before I could blink an eye, his eyes hardened and he scowled. Watch where you're going, bitch. Are you blind or something? He said harshly and he continued walking in the other direction, but before he left, he bumped my shoulder hard that I fell on the ground. I grabbed my shoulder in pain. It was bad enough that it was hurting already. Everyone started laughing at me and I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. I watched the mysterious guy's back retreating and for some reason, I felt like my heart broke in two. What the hell? I thought. What's going on? And what the hell is shoved up that guy's butt? I smiled a little. He had a great butt for sure. I shook my head to clear those nasty thoughts. He certainly wasn't having a good morning, but he shouldn't have taken his anger out on me. I did nothing to him. Why did I feel like my heart broke in two? I didn't know him. I certainly didn't love him. I don't believe in falling in love. It was too overrated. Anger began to surge inside of me and I heard a deep growl. It wasn't until then that I realized it came from me. What the hell? Did I just growl? Surely this school isn't normal. I could feel it in the atmosphere. I felt like there were many things that I was meant to uncover. But how can I find it if I don't even know what I'm looking for in the first place? And why the hell did I feel like I didn't know myself anymore? I felt like I was stronger and my temper was hanging on a thread. My temper never went out of control this fast. I wondered why I suddenly felt like this. Oh right, I wasn't normal. I'm Emily Saunders. I was far from normal. The people were still staring at me and for a moment, I felt embarrassed. Hold your head up high and smile. Stand up tall and remain strong. You are strong. I heard my brother's voice in my head. So I stood up, picked up my stuff and walked away with my head held up high, feeling strong. Chapter 4. I did a little victory dance in my head when I found classroom A232. Yes, I made it just on time, I thought, just as the late bell rang. The whole class was filled with students and a few chairs were empty. Some of the students were staring off into space while the others carried a bored expression. When I walked to Mr. Jenkins's desk, everyone's head perked up and the stares of many eyes burned a hole in my back. Mr. Jenkins's was pretty young. He was probably 25. He was pretty hot too, but I was too young for him. Not to mention he was my teacher. I shivered in disgust of the thought of a teacher kissing his student. He had light brown hair that was cut short and he had hazel eyes. His face was perfectly sculpted and he had a nice build. Please don't tell me the teachers here are hot too. A little voice in my head said. I don't think I could handle all that pressure. I neared his little office space at the back of the room and he had his feet propped up on the dark wooden desk. He was staring at his cell phone and his fingers were pressing on some buttons. He was texting. I was surprised to find he looked pretty chill. The teachers at my old school never looked this relaxed and carefree. I looked at Mr. Jenkins and he hasn't noticed me yet. He was still texting on his BlackBerry. I cleared my throat and he looked up slowly. He smiled and realization dawned on his face. You must be the new student, he said. Emily, right? Just call me Emily, I said, giving a small smile and nodded. All right, class, "This here is the new student, Emily," Mr. Jenkins's announced to the class. I turned around and gave a shy wave to the class. Some students smiled while some guys checked me out. EW, I thought. "You can sit over there, Mr. Jenkins pointed at a desk near the windows. "We're just waiting for some students." I sat down in my assigned seat and let out a sigh. I closed my eyes for a while to regain control of myself. "Okay, Emily, get a grip, we can get through this. You're doing great so far. Remember, you are strong," I thought to myself. "Emily, I didn't know I had this class with you," I heard a familiar voice say. I looked to my right and saw Abigail sitting next to me. She had a huge lopsided grin on her face. "Oh, hey Abigail," I said enthusiastically, smiling at her. 5 minutes already passed and we still haven't started class. "So, who exactly are we waiting for?" I asked Abigail. "The Crescent Pack." She rolled her eyes at the stupid name. I raised my eyebrow in confusion and she sighed. "The 4 boys who are always fashionably late. It's not the whole group, but you get what I'm saying." I nodded and she continued. "Anyways, they totally hold us back. I want to get into a good college, but with them being late and all, my lessons are cut short. Why don't you bring it up to the office? They receive a no credit for being late all the time, don't they?" She sighed again. "Unfortunately, no matter what we do, it doesn't really matter. They are the richest group in the whole school. The leader's father founded this school and pays for everything." The door to the classroom suddenly banged open and the 4 boys walked in one by one. And of course all of them were gorgeous. I noticed one of them was the mystery guy who shoved me down this morning. I quickly looked down at my lap, trying to appear unnoticed. "Oh, speaking of the angels," Abigail said sarcastically, but loud enough for the boys to hear. "They finally graced us with their presence." One of the boys smirked at her. "Babe, I know you missed me and all, but you don't have to share your excitement with the whole world." He had black hair that complemented his creamy skin, and he had gray eyes that were mysterious. His white button-down shirt was rolled up to his elbows and his black straight-fit jeans made it obvious that he knew how to dress himself up nicely. Abigail snorted and crossed her arms over her chest. "You wish, Eli. It's Elliot, babe. Only my friends call me Eli." Abigail rolled her eyes and snorted. "Abs, Eli's jealous because he saw you kissing Charles this morning," another guy said. He had rusted-colored hair and brown eyes. The class was humored by the comeback Elliot's friend just threw at him. I saw Abigail's face heat up and a sad expression crossed her face quickly before she smirked at Elliot, who was clearly not happy. I made a note to ask Abigail about this little situation. "What?" I was a curious girl and I loved gossip. "Shut up, Jet," Elliot growled at his friend who I assumed was Jet. "Class, settle down, Mr. Jenkins scolded the class, but you could hear the light humor in his voice. "Where are your passes, boys? I assume you have a reason to be late, Mr. Marshall." The guy that shoved me down this morning just shook his head and smirked. "Mr. Jenkins, you know I'm not the responsible one." "Oh, Weston. When are you ever going to learn that being a leader, especially for this group, requires responsibility? Especially for this group." I asked myself suspiciously. "So his name is Weston, huh? Sexy. Wait, what? I shouldn't think like that." I shook the thought out of my head before looking back at the group of boys. My gaze was specifically on Weston. He was totally sexy, probably the sexiest out of the 4 boys. He had a nice lean body that could be number 1 on any slut's list, if you know what I mean. His jet black hair was styled messily and my hands were itching to run through it. His deep blue eyes had a story behind them, and I just wanted to stare at them until I figured out what they were trying to say. Thomas saw me staring at him. Ugh, I didn't realize I was staring at him. What the hell is wrong with me today? A look of comfort passed his face before it was quickly wiped away with a smirk. "Like what you see?" he asked. I smirked back and said, "If I like trash, then maybe." He looked taken aback and the whole class got quiet. I hated cocky, egoistic jerks. Everyone turned their attentions to me. Then suddenly Elliot and Jet were in front of me. "So you're the new girl Jade was talking about yesterday," Elliot said. "Nice to meet you, I'm Elliot, but call me Eli." He stuck out his hand and I shook it. Abigail scoffed. It was probably because he told me to use his nickname. "Abs, babe, you don't have to be jealous," Eli said, looking over his shoulder at Abigail. "And I'm Jet, the other boy told me." Jet smiled at me and shook my hand. It was obvious they didn't take their good looks for granted. And they weren't players who constantly flirted with girls like their life depended on it. I'm Emily, but call me Emily. It's nice to meet you guys, I said sincerely and smiled genuinely. Okay, let's begin this class, Mr. Jenkins called out enthusiastically, while many groans erupted from the students. I watched as Eli, Jet, and Thomas took their seats. One guy stayed behind and talked with Mr. Jenkins quietly. He was good-looking himself. I'm assuming that he's the most responsible one. He strangely resembled Channing Tatum. You know, the guy from Dear John. And let me tell you, I find Channing Tatum very sexy. He's my favorite male actor. The guy walked to his seat and he saw me looking at him. So he smiled and winked at me before taking his seat next to Weston. I looked down at my lap, feeling the blood rush to my cheeks slowly. Chapter 5, Emily's POV. I think I can die happy now 'cause I've just seen a piece of heaven, Jared said and looked at me with a playful grin on his face. I choked on my stale French fry. Are you referring to the French fry? I asked him as if he was crazy, but I was laughing on the inside. Gah. Can't you just let me have fun for once? That's already 20 pickup lines and usually they work for most girls. Why are you so good at this? He asked, frustrated, but quickly erased it with a smirk. Oh no, here it goes again. I wonder what else you're good at, he said suggestively, arching his eyebrow in a seductive way. I threw him one of my French fries and it landed on his gray shirt, leaving a spot of oil behind. Gosh, this was a new shirt. Don't you have a washing machine? I asked between laughs. Babe, the expensive stuff doesn't matter. All I want is you, he said and pouted. I laughed again. I was really having fun with Jared and the Stone Pack. Yes, you heard me, the Stone Pack. Jared, Abigail, Charles, Dustin, and Alex made it up. I guess this school runs in packs, not groups or cliques. I asked Jared why they called themselves a pack, but he laughed at me like I was crazy. So now here I am eating lunch with them. I was supposed to eat with Jade, but I couldn't find her. Since I had Jared for the previous class, I followed him to lunch. The cafeteria was like any school cafeteria on a regular day. It was noisy and the food was disgusting. Surprisingly, the cafeteria was clean. The tables didn't even have gum underneath them. I was already getting comfortable with the Stone Pack. They were easy to get along with. Sure, Jared was always trying to flirt with me, but I knew he was just playing around. Not to mention Abigail and Charles were in their own little world, but I totally understood. They were in love. There was a pang in my chest when I thought about my previous love life. However, I just shook those thoughts away. Dustin hasn't warmed up to me just yet. He ate lunch quietly and looked at me occasionally. It was as if he was trying to figure me out. Alex was busy reading a book. I learned that he loved reading and he wanted to be an author someday. Emily, did I ever tell you that you look like a light switch? You, Jared began. Shut the fuck up, Jared. She's not interested and it ain't working, Alex interrupted. I laughed at Jared and immediately clamped my mouth shut when I saw the whole Crescent pack standing by our table with their lunches. Eli looked at Abigail with a pained expression. Jet looked as if he were going to jump if anyone made a move. Weston's mouth was set in a thin line and Channing Tatum looked mad. There was one girl that I haven't seen before. She had white blonde hair that was sleek in perfection. Her eyes were sapphire and her smile was perfect. I looked at her in awe. She was beautiful. Like Jade, they were both smiling. I looked at the Crescent pack curiously. I could feel the tension in the air. Obviously, the two packs weren't exactly good friends. Emily, do you want to sit with us? Jade asked with a friendly look on her face. By the way, this is Stacy, she pointed to the girl next to her. You met all the boys already, right? Not me. I'm Warren. Channing Tatum look-alike cut in. He had a deep voice, but it was smooth. I shook his hand and introduced myself. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Thomas shift from one foot to the other, looking uncomfortable. Warren smiled at me. So what do you say, you want to join us for lunch? War, I don't want some new chick to sit at our table, Thomas spat. His deep voice sent shivers down my spine. For all we know, she could be insane. I mean, look at her, she has ketchup at the corner of her mouth and she doesn't even know. In one swift movement, I took my napkin and wiped it across my mouth. I frowned when I realized that there was ketchup on my face. I looked down at my lap and I knew my face was as red as a tomato. I wasn't sure why, but his words cut a hole in my heart. What the fuck, Weston? Jade smacked Thomas across the head. He flinched and continued to glare at me. Jade turned her attention to me and smiled apologetically. Please excuse my idiotic brother. Something seems to be up his panties today. Alex and Dustin snickered, while Charles, Abigail, and Jared glared at Weston. Don't ever talk like that to her again, Jared growled. His growl was shockingly scary. My heart raced just hearing it. You barely know her and you're defending her. Thomas questioned and scoffed. Like she'd go for a guy like you. You're worthless. I looked to my side and found Jared looking down. He looked defeated. Oh hell no. Nobody talks to my friends that way, nobody. Who did this Weston guy think he was? A growl erupted from my chest and everyone snapped their heads at me. I didn't care, I was mad. Who the fuck do you think you are? I asked, standing up and facing Weston. The whole cafeteria went dead silent. Anger surged throughout my whole body, reaching my fingertips. You think you're high and mighty, huh? Just because your dad found this school and pays for everything. You think you're a king who could just humiliate everyone. I roared. He just glared at me. I was face to face with him. Let me tell you. You are the king, I said, pretending to sound defeated. Everyone started whispering while I saw the corners of his mouth tug up. Yeah, that's right. The king of dumbass. I smirked at him and walked back to my table. You're going to regret that, Thomas growled, but I ignored it. I could see the fury burning in his eyes. But I ignored him and focused on the grins plastered on the stone packs' faces. I took my seat next to Jared and he put his arm around me. Did I ever tell you that you're one badass chick? Jared whispered in my ear and I chuckled. Oh, about 100 times, babe. But I love hearing it over and over again. Just then, Thomas tore Jared's arm off my shoulder. He glared at Jared while a growl escaped from his lips. His hands were shaking uncontrollably and his blue eyes kept changing colors. It was blue one second and the next it was yellow. I looked at him shocked. That was definitely not normal. But I quickly shook those thoughts away and I looked at Weston, ready to smack him in the face this time around. Don't touch her like that ever again, Thomas growled. Gasps erupted from everywhere in the cafeteria and everyone started whispering. The two-packs had a shocked expression on their faces. However, before anyone could say anything, Thomas rushed out of the cafeteria, pushing anyone who was in his way. I sat there silently. I was ready to punch something, anything. Thomas Brown was stupid. He was selfish, egoistical, and a player. He was busy making out with Karen, the head cheerleader, the whole entire day. Not to mention, they almost got it on in Mr. McCarthy's class. I had them for every of my classes and I shivered in disgust every time I saw them. He had a girlfriend and he had no right to tell any boy for that matter to stay away. I hated him being a jerk to me. I hated myself for wanting him to be nice to me. Most importantly, I hated how he affected me the most and all he did was hurt me. Aunt Felly, I'm home. I yelled when I opened the door to my house. My mom ended up going on a business trip this morning, and I was slightly disappointed she was gone already just when I arrived. However, I knew this was going to happen sooner or later. Oh, welcome home, dear. Aunt Felly appeared at the top of the staircase, smiling down at me. I made you some cornbread for your afternoon snack. How was your first day? I thought of the events that happened today, and only one word came to mind. Eventful, I replied. My back started to ache and I winced. Turns out the pain in my shoulder reached my back too. Aunt Felly, I really do want to try your cornbread, but my back is aching. Do we have more Epsom salt? Gosh, dear. I'm 53 and you're experiencing back pains before me. She chuckled. I'll get you some. It's in the shed at the back of the house. She started turning away from her previous work and started heading downstairs. Wait, Aunt Felly. I could get it, I said, and she froze on one of the steps. You sure, hon? She asked, worry filling her voice. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been out there. I want to see if it changed. I smiled, which made her face soften. All right, just be careful. Don't go out into the woods, she said sternly. I chuckled. That was something she used to say a lot when I was little. She didn't have to remind me. Those woods scared the shit out of me. I opened the door that led to the backyard. The air was frigid, which made me shiver. Goosebumps rose all over my body and I rubbed my arms trying to warm up. I found myself staring at the woods. It always made me wonder what was hidden in the depths of the trees and the fog. I always wondered why my mother never put up a fence to fend off a wild animal who will one day decide to trespass on our property. Just then I saw something blurry zip through the trees and I started to panic. But being me, I froze. That was something I did often when something creepy happens when I'm alone. However, as I looked at the eerie woods again, there was nothing. Just the same fog and the strange darkness. I was probably hallucinating again. I chuckled at myself for being stupid and continued walking to the shed. I was about to unlock the shed's door, but I froze when I heard a growl and something running through the trees once again. I dropped the key and whipped around. What the hell was that? I thought. I looked around nervously, hoping that I was just hallucinating again. But, of course, bad luck was attracted to me. My breath hitched when I saw a huge gray wolf emerge from the trees. However, it was too big to be a wolf and a little too small to be a bear. And it certainly did not look like a bear. Call me crazy, but the thing looked a lot like a werewolf. I was shaking in fear as the gray wolf neared me slowly. It was taking a step at a time, like it was trying not to frighten me. Too late, I thought, and I started to run towards my house. The wolf growled and I heard it running after me. I screamed for help, but no one could have heard me. Not even Aunt Felly. She was probably washing clothes and humming some old tune, not even realizing that I was going to die soon. I turned to look back to see if the wolf was gaining up on me. Didn't I learn from scary movies never to look back? Fate seemed to hate me at the moment as I tripped on a rock and fell. I felt the tears stream down my face. I was awaiting death to take me already. In a matter of seconds, the wolf had me pinned to the ground. Its weight was suffocating me. I was so tiny compared to this beast. I screamed when I felt its teeth sink into my shoulder. The pain was excruciating and I felt the tears stream down my face faster. Before the darkness engulfed me, I looked up to see deep blue eyes staring back at me. Where have I seen those before? I asked myself. However, before I could answer that question, I was already pulled into the pitch black. Chapter 6. I jolted upright. The first thing I saw was darkness. The only sound was my heavy panting. My shirt was sticking to my sweaty back. I took in my surroundings and realized that I was only in my room. I was safe and tucked into the dark purple comforters of my bed. I laid back down and sighed in relief. Oh, thank God it was only just a dream, I thought. I quickly sat back up again. I don't remember falling asleep in my bed last night. I remember going back to the shed to grab some Epsom salt and seeing the mythical creature that appeared right before my eyes. I quickly shook those thoughts away and chuckled at myself for being stupid. This place was really making me go crazy. There was probably some virus in the air. Checking the time, I found that it was already 6 o'clock in the morning. School started in about 2 hours. Aunt Felly usually woke me up at this time, but she hasn't come into my room yet. She probably overslept. I put my arms over my head to stretch my back, but a piercing pain erupted from my right shoulder. I gasped and put my arms down. What if the mythical creature actually bit me? What if I had some virus spreading in my body right now? Oh, please don't be rabies. I gasped once again. What if I was dead? I quickly got up from my bed, turning on the lights. I ran over to my mirror and looked at myself in horror. There was a huge bite mark on my right shoulder. It was still slightly red, but it couldn't have healed this quickly. I ran my hands over the new sore, grimacing when I felt pain. It wasn't a dream. There were so many questions that I wanted to ask, but no one to answer them. What was that beast in my backyard? What will this bite mark do to me? Will I become sick and suffer? Will I die? Or was I dead already? So many questions bombarded my head and I started to cry. Last night's episode ran in my head again. I was terrified on so many levels. Making sure I wasn't dead, I rushed out of my room and ran down the stairs. I found Aunt Felly at the front door, speaking in a hushed tone to someone. A wave of relief surged through my body. If I was dead and in heaven or hell, Aunt Felly wouldn't have been here. I was still surely alive. Wait, what if the beast killed Aunt Felly too? I tensed up and mentally laughed at myself for being stupid again. George, it ain't a good time. Your daughter is sleepin' and you're drunk, Aunt Felly said. Oh, come on, Fell, I ain't drunk. Not un bit. A bit. A voice slurred and the man chuckled. Anger surged through me as I recognized the voice as my father's own. I just want to talk to my daughter, that's all. She's being such a spoiled brat lately. Someone needs to teach her a lesson. I marched over to the door and kicked it open wider. The smell of alcohol filled my nose. I gagged. My father's hair was sticking up in all different places. His eyes were watery and his smile irritated the hell out of me. His tie was undone and he had vomit stains on his white shirt. Danny, I missed you. Please talk to me. He took a swig of the beer he was holding. Dad, go home. I don't want to talk to you, I spat. Emily, what happened to you? My dad asked, his eyes tearing up. You've been such a hard ass late. He burped and I looked at him in disgust. Lately? Go home, Dad, to your lovely wife. I yelled at him sarcastically and shut the door in his face. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, trying to calm myself down. Honey, you okay? Aunt Feli's southern accent calmed me down. I looked at her and smiled softly. Yeah, let's just forget about it. Next time I want you to call the police. She nodded sorrowfully. 5 seconds passed before she looked at me with a mischievous smile on her face and looking at my bitten shoulder. So who was in your room last night? Looks like the young fellow found you delicious, Han. She asked and I looked at her in horror. Aunt Feli winked at me and continued. Don't worry, I won't tell your mama that you lost your virginity already. As long as you use protection, and it ain't my fault if you get pregnant. Did you use protection? Darlin', I can buy you some and you need la 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 la. I shouted while covering my ears. My face was surely as red as a tomato. This was such an awkward subject. Aunt Feli, I did not lose the big V yet, and you know I'm looking for the right one. That was so disgusting, Aunt Feli. You're one crazy old woman. She looked at my shoulder, disbelief written all over her face. I wanted to tell her that it was a mythical creature, but I would sound like a mad woman. She'd send me to the doctor again and refused to leave until she received an explanation. She sighed and winked again. Whatever you say, darlin'. Whatever you say, she said sarcastically. Ain't Feli a mi dad? I asked. I was still curious about it and I just had to ask. I mean, what would you do if you were in a situation and you didn't know if you were dead or alive? Aunt Feli looked at me with a funny look. Are you sure I'm the one that's crazy? She laughed and walked away. Thomas wasn't kidding when he said that I was going to regret everything I did to him. These past 2 weeks he constantly bothered me. Either he was throwing trash at my head during class, tripping me while I ran in gym, teasing me, or spilling his drink on my homework. He even did some of the old school stuff like filling my lockers with soda, which made everything very sticky, by the way, spilling his drinks once again on my lunch and even egging my car. I mean, seriously, egging my car. So childish. I learned to ignore it and walk away. I wasn't going to show him I was weak. I wasn't going to show him that he was easily going to get everything his way. He'll get it back in the future somehow and sometime. Karma really is a bitch. The stone pack was even helping me, so it made my situations much easier. They helped me wash the eggs off my car, clean my locker, and caught me when I fell in gym. They also suggested that I made extra copies of my homework and eat lunch before Thomas appeared. Every time someone stood up to Thomas and told him to leave me alone, his actions just got worse. So it was pointless. Jade even smacked him in the head a couple of times and apologized for him. She even had to stay away from me because Mr. Devil told her that if she hung out with me, it made things worse. But those things never hurt me as much as it hurt me to see him with other girls. After I got bitten, I felt a strange connection with him. It felt like a magnet was trying to pull me to him every time he was near. The tingles intensified if he accidentally brushed against me. I also found him even more attractive and my hands kept itching to run through his hair or caress his face. Speaking of being bitten, my shoulder healed quickly, leaving a small crescent-shaped mark behind. I found it weird but oddly beautiful at the same time. It looked like a birthmark. The mark was right where my neck and collarbone met. Fingers snapping in my face caused me to wake up from my reverie. I looked up and saw Thomas smirking. One of his arms was wrapped around Hannah's waist and I willed myself to tear my eyes off of the physical contact. Every week he had someone new, but I just kept feeling the same odd pain over and over again. I couldn't possibly be in love with him. You're in denial, a little voice in my head teased. Jared came closer to me and I could tell he was tense. He was a great friend and almost like a brother to me. He wanted to beat the hell out of Thomas already, but I told him not to. It would just get me into more mess. The whole cafeteria went dead silent. Every eye was fixed on us. This is the usually routine and I sighed when I realized how horrible I looked. My hair was a complete mess. I didn't have time to put on any makeup this morning. My clothes were stained from the Coke Thomas accidentally spilled on me earlier, And there were dark circles under my eyes because I had to do my homework twice, and that caused me to stay up late at night. Before I could say a word to Weston, he spilled his spaghetti all over my white shirt, adding more stains. The whole cafeteria erupted into laughter. I simply stood up and took off the noodles hanging from my shirt. I sighed again. "Abs, can you help me clean up?" I said, my voice sounding tired. Abigail nodded and looked at me with a sorrowful expression. I grabbed my bag that contained my clean clothes. Before we left, I looked back at Weston. He was kissing the slut. Hannah's hands ran up his chest, and I wished it were me feeling those defined muscles. My eyes were blurring with tears, but I didn't dare let one tear escape. Thomas opened his eyes and saw me staring. He was still kissing her, but he was looking at me. His eyes twinkled with amusement, and then the bastard winked. I clenched and unclenched my fist. When will all this hell end? Weston's POV stupid. I thought and smacked myself mentally. Why the fuck did I just mark Emily? To mark her as our own and only our own, my wolf growled. Seeing Jared's arm around my mate made me angry. However, I was furious when she called him babe. At that point, I just snapped. I didn't know meeting your mate would make you feel this possessive. I cringed when I remembered her screaming in agony as I bit her shoulder. I didn't want to hurt her, but I had to in order to call her my own. But I was stupid, didn't I just say I couldn't love her? This would make the attraction much stronger, and she will surely fall in love with me. I was walking to her house the morning after I bit her to make sure she was all right when a drunk man stumbled out of a bush. I grimaced when the smell of alcohol filled my nose. Hey you. Man, you know my daughter Diane. He slurred. I looked at him suspiciously. Emily came from him. Few do, can you convince her to talk to me? Man, she's been ignoring me. She's been a pain in the ass. My curiosity took over me. Why hasn't she been talking to you? I blurted out. And he told me everything. He told me he made her move here because he loved his new wife. Since he was drunk, he also added some inappropriate comments on how good his new wife was in bed. To me, he abandoned her for a skank. Then he told me that her boyfriend cheated with her best friend. My heart ached for her. Not to mention, she deserved a much better father figure. This guy was a total scumbag. I looked at him in disgust before giving him a black eye for hurting her, and I walked away from him trying to calm down. Anyways, I couldn't let her fall in love with me. I just couldn't. The only way to make that happen was to make her think I was a complete jerk. So for the past 2 weeks, I did things that I regretted. I also used girls to take my mind off of her. These girls couldn't compare to her. No matter how much I tried, I just couldn't forget about her. Emily's challenges have only just begun. Subscribe to our channel and face every challenge with her.